Welcome to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Here are your hosts, DJ Marcotte and John Soroyce. Enjoy the show.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground is where I spent most of my days. When a couple of guys, they were
This is the
started making trouble in
SNL version.
I
was gonna say I didn't recognize this version.
I know. I don't know if this is PG or not.
Yeah, it's on TV, so it's PG.
You think so?
Yeah.
It's
I've
late
seen
night
it.
though. Is it good?
It's cheesy.
Yeah. It's like the exact same
Yeah.
song.
The guys I fought weren't regular thugs, they were a powerful
It's
gang.
Method Man.
Running guns and
Anyway, welcome back to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. We'll get a little more of that going. The reason we're playing this song has to do with the. This is great. Sorry, very sidetracked. But if you ever get a chance, listen to or watch on YouTube the SNL version of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song. That's pretty funny. But we're not talking about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We're talking about the Fresh Prince of El-Air. And because we're going to talk about him so early in the process here, we're going to get right down to business with the news. That's the number one news topic for today, but we'll start with number 5 and lead to the crescendo that might have a little something to do with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the Fresh Prince of El-Air, as we like to call him here on the Working Class Podcast. Before we do that, though, I would like to welcome you all to the Working Class Podcast, the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast, and the perfect podcast for the average Joe. We are the Blue Collar Ballers, DJ John and Thom, and you can find all of our content on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, YouTube, Twitch, and on Instagram at armchair_fantasy_football, on Facebook at Armchair Fantasy Football, and on Twitter at ArmchairFFPod. And of course, you can email us at armchairfb@gmail.com. The topic of today's show is the all fade team. So we each have 3 players that we're fading a little bit today, and players that not necessarily going to have a bad year in fantasy football, but might not be worth what you think they are at this very moment in time. But on to the top 5 headlines, starting with number 5. Coach Frank Reich expects tight end Trey Burton to have a, quote, really productive year in 2020. What do you guys think of that?
I'm not buying it.
So is it still Jack Doyle's team?
I think it's still Doyle. Doyle's the veteran there at tight end, and I still think he will outperform any other tight end there.
Trey Burton, Tommy, flashed when he was in Philly. They had high hopes for him in Chicago. Didn't really pan out. Obviously not the best offense on the planet either. Do you see him at least sharing a role with Jack Doyle this year?
Oh, yeah, with Phillip Rivers out there, he loves the tight end. He's got 2 there, so I don't see anything wrong with that. I think he's going to have a good, decent season this year. My
only problem is that him and Doyle could cannibalize each other. I don't typically draft Indianapolis Colts tight ends, and it typically serves me well, that strategy, other than one year with Eric Ebron. And Doyle's been okay off and on. But like Thom said, this is a Phillip Rivers-led team, and he loves throwing the tight ends and running backs. So could be something there. I'm not drafting him, though. Are you guys?
Oh, no.
No.
Waiver wire, if anything.
Right. Number 4, Browns wide receiver Jarvis Landry's week 1 status is the, quote, biggest concern for the Browns passing offense. Landry did, guys, wait until February to have surgery on his injured hip. So that puts him in question for week 1. 2-part question. Do you think he's going to be ready week 1? Number 1. Number 2, who benefits the most if he's not? John, I'll start with you.
I think he'll be ready. I could be completely wrong. I've seen he was progressing well. I can't see him not being ready, but for some reason, if he's not, then the next person out would be Rashard Higgins to get that crack at it.
Yeah, and I don't have it right in front of me. I can look it up, though. But I do not think that Jarvis Landry's missed a ton of time in his career, if any time. I could be wrong. Thom, is it going to start this year?
I think he missed his first couple of games. I don't think they really need him early. I think it benefits the tight ends other than Njoku and Hooper out there. They both, with Stefanski's offense, they both can get the ball.
I was wrong. He had a couple of 14-game seasons and an 11-game season, but the rest of his seasons were 16 full games. So I agree. Austin Hooper is the main beneficiary of if Jarvis Landry happens to miss time. John, do you think there's anybody else out there? Maybe Kareem Hunt?
Kareem Hunt would be involved more in the pass game. He's been too successful there not to be.
Cool. All right, number 3, Lamar Jackson believes, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna consider this Lamar Jackson news, so I don't break my rule of there's no more news on Antonio Brown on our show. I'm gonna call this Lamar Jackson news, if you guys are okay with that. But Lamar Jackson believes Antonio Brown is the, quote, type of guy we need in our locker room. Jackson also stated in a conversation with team reporters, quote, I can tell in him he wants to win. We want to play ball. Coincidentally, guys, Jackson's current number 1 wide receiver is Antonio Brown's cousin, Marquise Hollywood Brown. This is a great fit if they can get their hands on him.
Oh, it'd be a huge upgrade for a receiver. It'd actually give him, a veteran wide receiver as long as he's got his head on straight.
It elevates Jackson. I think it hurts Marquise Brown from a target standpoint, Tom, but if Antonio Brown were to be on the field, teams would have to pay attention to him, and it might open some more targets up for Brown.
Well, Brown's
Hollywood Brown.
Antonio's the cross the middle guy. Hollywood's the deep threat, so he can
two
just go down
different
the
types of
field.
players, yeah.
So it benefits both guys.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of a downgrade for Mark Andrews, but not much. But realistically, is this happening?
Deep down, no.
If it does, he won't be playing until the end of the year anyway, so
Right.
he'll be
He'll have
suspended.
Great
what,
point.
8-game suspension they're
Looking
talking
at
about?
I would guess an 8-game suspension. Okay, cool. Moving on to number 2. TJ Hawkinson and Kenny Golladay, guys, are on the COVID list. That doesn't mean much right now. As a matter of fact, I suppose if you were to get coronavirus, the earlier the better. Preferably not at all. And this also doesn't indicate that they have coronavirus. HIPAA laws kind of don't allow them to divulge that information, but they are on the COVID list. So Golladay specifically is really the first big name outside of Ezekiel Elliott to be noted on this. What do you think of this whole COVID list thing?
It's scary because you see your player there, but at the point you brought up a great point.
Have Kenny Golladay,
yes,
in a keeper league, so
but you brought up a great point though before the show. Is wouldn't you rather them have it now? That way during the season you don't have to deal with this.
Well, that doesn't mean they can't get it again.
Yeah,
it hasn't been. There are people that have gotten it twice. Those people aren't very careful, if I just may say that. But if you have it once, you'd think you'd really try to be cautious to not get it again. But in any event, it has happened. But the percentages have to be in the favor of not getting this twice, I would think. So to me, with that being said, I'd rather see like Zeke Elliott. Cool. Hopefully he doesn't get it again. Hopefully he is less likely to get it again. And I got him all season. You know what I mean, Tom?
Oh yeah, get it out of the way now. Get it in July and August. You don't have to worry about it in October, November, December when it matters the most.
Yeah, definitely. Number 1 with a bullet, guys. Damian Williams opts out of the 2020 season. I'll be honest with you. I was eyeballing in our keeper league Clyde Edwards-Helaire with my first pick. But I was a little nervous about Damian Williams. I was going to hedge my bets and pick Williams up as a handcuff. This has got to put Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the driver's seat at the running back position for the Kansas City Chiefs. And the starting / lead running back for the Kansas City Chiefs is pretty good coin to have there. That's a pretty good chip to have. And I think I'm going to have him. Darwin Thompson's there. Darrell Williams there. And they just got DeAndre Washington in free agency this year. But none of those guys have the skill set that Edwards-Helaire has. He's going to fly up rankings right now. Should he?
Oh yeah, definitely. He's got every opportunity here to be a cowbell back here.
Bell cow,
cowbell, whatever. But he definitely, analysts and everybody else are ranking him basically after Kamara, after Elliott. He's basically in that top 6 now, and he deserves to be. He has a chance to destroy numbers as a rookie.
So right now, first of all, Tom, do you agree with that sentiment?
I don't. I'm not 100% on him right now. I haven't seen him in a pro field yet. He didn't wow everyone at the combine. His speed's not as fast. Let's see if he can pick up the third down blitzers on the outside with Bosa and Ingram or Chubb and Miller. See how well he can handle that. The running part's the easy parts. The rest of the little things he has to learn.
But he's going to get first crack at this.
Oh, yeah, unless they sign, like, Freeman or somebody like that, just off waivers, to get a veteran guy in there to help him learn the system and learn how to play.
And you mentioned that, John, but I still think, and they also, I think, have Elijah McGuire on the team.
I
too.
also forgot, though, too, that DeAndre Washington has history with Mahomes at Texas Tech. He actually had a very successful time at Texas Tech with Mahomes. So, to me, it sounds like it would be Hilaire and then Washington backing up Hilaire here with possibly Darwin Thompson being mixed in for a pass-catching role.
Yeah, that's a great point. And at the end of the day, guys, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is now, I mean, I would maybe draft Josh Jacobs ahead of him. I would maybe draft Miles Sanders ahead of him. I would definitely draft Dalvin Cook ahead of him. But, I mean, he just leapfrogged a lot of guys. And Tom brought up a point, well, how's he going to fit in with the offense? I mean, this team believes in him, and I feel like they're going to get behind him and put him in the best position to be successful. That's my take on it, especially given the kind words from not just Andy Reid, but the offensive coordinator, the running backs coach, so on and so forth. This dude just shot high up the rankings, and you got to be careful now, because is he going to be a value where he might have been? I mean, in some leagues he was already a second-round pick. He might have jumped into the first round here, and frankly, guys, he probably did. And is that too high? I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I would keep an eye on it. Like Tom said, I would keep an eye on pass pros, a big deal, pass blocking, stuff like that. But it's not the be-all, end-all. There are really productive running backs out there that aren't great at those things. There are really productive tight ends out there that aren't great run blockers. I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year. I love him more now. But as your ADP rises, your value drops, right? So that's something you got to be concerned with. But the Fresh Prince, man, I hope he has a great year. All right, before we get into it, poll the pod. You ready for this one, guys? Who is the best handcuff? Well, what is the best handcuff combo in fantasy football? So basically, who's the best handcuff for the starting running back on these particular teams? I feel like I went with the best handcuffs in the top 4 situations in the league. And please keep in mind, folks, that we aren't including players like Kareem Hunt, Phillip Lindsay, and Damian Williams. And as of now, we're not including him at all. For example, those guys are either competing for a starting role or have standalone value even as a backup. So we're not really going down that road. With that being said, the options are as follows: Alexander Mattison for Dalvin Cook, Tony Pollard for Ezekiel Elliott, Latavius Murray. I'm stuttering a lot today. What's the content of this? I got a nice cold beer here. It might have been a 10%er. I don't know. So Alexander Mattison for Dalvin Cook, Tony Pollard for Ezekiel Elliott, Latavius Murray for Alvin Kamara, and Chase Edmonds for Kenyon Drake. So who do you guys think is the best handcuff in the league, or do you think it might be somebody that I didn't list here? I'm going to go right out of the gate with Tony Pollard, and the reason for that is you know what kind of a workload that the running back gets on that team. Ezekiel Elliott gets a ton of work, obviously an excellent player as well. But we've also seen Tony Pollard excel when he's out there. He's performed really well when Zeke was, taking a break or might have been banged up. Tony Pollard's gone in there and really executed, and we can see that he can perform at the NFL level. So for me, it's Tony Pollard. Haven't quite seen that yet from Alexander Mattison. We've seen it from Chase Edmonds. We've seen it from Latavius Murray. But I think those guys might be more one-dimensional, not catch as many passes, so on and so forth. So for me, it's Tony Pollard. John?
I would say Pollard, and big reason I say that is their line. He has a better chance to be successful than most of those other handcuffs on that list. And not to mention, he did carve out himself a role early in the season last year, so he can do it. I mean, he can catch, he can run. He's proven to them that he can take over that lead spot if for some reason Zeke is out. As
Thom?
for the others, they've been hit or miss.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Murray, just because the offense, New Orleans uses him more than just as a backup. Him and Kamara on the field at the same time a lot. He's a goal line back. He's a 3rd-and-1 back. He's on the field a lot more than the other guys are most of the time.
Yeah, that's true. And he was borderline one of those guys that does have standalone value. But yeah, Latavius Murray is probably the easy number 2 for me. So yeah, what do you guys think? Don't forget to participate in the conversation on Facebook and also the poll on Twitter. And tell us what you guys think. Who's the best handcuff in the NFL? It's main event time, fellas. The fade list. We're gonna start with the negatives in the next week on Tuesday's show. We're gonna spread the positivity, spread the positive vibes with our fave list and our favorite players for the upcoming 2020 season. But we're starting with the fades first. And John, we're gonna start with you. You're batting lead off. Who's your first fade?
It's Aaron Jones for the Green Bay Packers. Like I said before.
Let me just jump in.
Go ahead.
Just to be very clear to the listeners, these aren't players that we think are going to stink. Right, fellas? These are players that we think they're not as valuable as the consensus might think their average draft position might indicate or their rankings might indicate. For example, I have Mike Evans on my list. Doesn't mean I think he's a bad player or that he's going to be horrible all year, but he's not going to give you the value and the return that the information is indicating that he will. He's not going to be, in my opinion, worthy of his second round status right now. So that's kind of the basis of where we're going with this.
And to mention, it's them hitting their stats from last year as well. I mean, I'm not saying that Aaron Jones is going to put up a complete done-only rush for 100 yards, but the chances of a repeat 19 touchdowns for the league lead is definitely possibly something that isn't going to happen. I shouldn't say ain't.
So basically, whether it be regression, whether it be they're not going to meet their ADP, whether it mean they're not going to meet their ranking, you're going to be disappointed in these players to a degree. That's the message that we're trying to send. So, John, continue with Mr. Aaron Jones.
So, Aaron Jones, like I was saying before, he finished as the RB2 last year. His ADP this year so far is 15th. Strength of schedule is 17th. He averaged 19.7 fantasy points per game in PPR last year. He did have 19 total touchdowns. So one reason I'm jumping off the Aaron Jones train is he had 5 games with 2 or more touchdowns. To have a couple games is huge, but 5 games with 2 or more. The chances of repeating that are very hard. And it accounted for a bulk of his touchdowns. I mean, he had 4 against Dallas. He had 3 against Carolina in Week 10. And then Week 15 and 16, he piled on 2 more. And that doesn't account for Week 3 as well. The difference, another big reason I'm getting off the Jones train is Jamal Williams last year got banged up that first game, missed most in the first quarter, got dinged out. And then on top of that, he still missed 2 games as well. They do like Jamal Williams quite a bit here.
His numbers went down pretty big too, Jones, with Williams on the field.
Yes. The other part of it too is Brian, I can never see his name, Gutekunst, the general manager.
Okay.
Really likes Jamal Williams. He's actually even said that he is their best.
I bet you butchered that name, but
I
don't
probably
even
did.
know.
He, can you pronounce that? Gutekunst?
Careful there, John.
Yeah, I'm not going to be tempted.
He said that Williams is a good important reason, part of the offense, because he's their best best running back blocker for pass protection.
He's the best pass pro.
Yes, thank you. But Williams
You've
involved
been
here.
drinking this beer too.
I know. Jones did play 663 snaps, 61% of the share. Williams 373, 35% of the share. So yes, it sounds like it's Jones's backfield, but like I said, Williams missed 2 games. He also missed the first game where he got carted off the field. Now you add in A.J. Dillon. We saw what happened in Tennessee when LaFleur added Derrick Henry, and it's a matter of time before A.J. Dillon vultures any carries here. But Jones is just not that workhorse back. I mean, like I said at the beginning, he only saw 3 games with 20 or more attempts, and it's not so much attempts. Most of his attempts were in the low teens, 12, 13. And now you have to remember kind of that his early on was kind of game scripted with Devontae Adams out as well. Devontae Adams is back, and he will have the red zone shares, I think, more here than at the beginning. Jones had the opportunity.
So what I noticed last year is when Devontae Adams was on the field, Aaron Jones's productivity dipped. When Jamal Williams was on the field, Aaron Jones's productivity dipped. And now you're looking at a guy, A.J. Dillon, that he's going to take some of the goal line carries from Aaron Jones. There's no doubt about it. He might only, shave 2 touchdowns off of that. Aaron Rodgers might shave another 2, but there's implied regression here. Anything else on Aaron Jones, John?
The other part, last year, Jamal Williams only gave up 1 pressure allowed with his pass blocking. So to me, where the year before he gave up 8. So he's like I said, he's their best pass pro blocker out there. They're not just going to get rid of him because of this. And now you add A.J. Dillon into this mix. And then, let's not forget, they got cremated in the NFC Championship by George Kittle and company. They're going to have to change their game script a little bit here. So I don't see Aaron Jones getting the volume, the usage with Adams back. I think they're going to change the offense a little bit here. Be a little less run heavy. Probably fit more 50-50 than 60-40 here. So I just don't see Jones having that season.
So are you telling me that we don't get to...
Not this year.
No? Now, this is like my favorite part of Aaron Jones, is the fact that we get to play this music.
I think he sees regression definitely in the touchdown total.
All right, but I'm not happy about it. But I agree with you. Thom, you agree with
I
this.
agree. I think it's Dillon's team by the end of the year. They drafted him to be he's a feature back starting next year. Jones is in a contract year. They probably won't re-sign him. They might re-sign Jamal Williams just for third down back and his blocking ability. Jones is going to be the odd man out.
Yep. Okay, cool. Thom, who's your first fade for today? Are you unprepared? He's shuffling his papers, ladies and gentlemen.
Devontae Parker. He had a career year in 2019 with 72 receptions for 1,202 yards for 16.7 yards a catch and 9 touchdowns. This was his breakout year in year 5, which coincidentally was also the contract year where he signed a 4-year, $40 million contract extension with more than $20 million guaranteed. He can thank the career year with journeyman backup quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick. Knowing Fitzpatrick isn't a long-term solution at quarterback, the Dolphins selected with the 5th pick in the 2020 draft Tua Tagovailoa out of Alabama Crimson Tide. I won't even get into injuries for Tua. There was a few, but simple fact, he's left-handed. Left-handed quarterbacks in the last 40 years, there hasn't been many of them. There's been guys like Boomer Esiason, Mike Vick, Scott Mitchell, Mark Brunell, and Steve Young have been very good. But most of them flop, like Cade McNown, Doug Nussmeier, Paul McDonald, Todd Marinovich, Jared Lorenzen, Tyler Paco, Pat White, Kellen Moore, and Chris Sims, Matt Leinart, and Tim Tebow.
Did you make some of those names up?
No, they were all lefties.
Just kidding. What was the second guy there?
Doug Newheiser.
Newtonheiser. That sounds like a fake name.
He didn't play long, but...
Okay,
McLovin.
McLovin, yeah. Continue, Thom. I'm sorry, I'm so disruptive. 9
of those quarterbacks started at least one game as rookies, and none of them had a higher completion percentage of over 57.5. Why? Lefties are different. The ball comes out of their hands different. The spin is different. And rookie years, they always struggle with the wide receivers. If Ryan Fitzpatrick's on the field, the ball goes one way. With Tua on the field, it's going to be the other. It's going to be chaos out there a little bit.
And that's
early.
an adjustment that Parker's going to have.
Parker's going to have to learn, but with no offseason, they're really going to struggle this year with that.
So how long, just to jump in real quick, how long do you think it takes before Tua to end up on the field taking over the starting quarterback role from Ryan Fitzpatrick?
The fans want him now, but I don't think the coaching staff wants to rush him out there. But
I don't think that's a good idea. Yeah, I'd rather wait.
Just for the fact that it's a big learning curve for the offense.
But you're thinking by week 6 we should expect.
I think he's going to be out there, but
yeah.
It affects your line too because your left side of your line, your strong side. But when Tua's out there, the right side.
Now your right tackle is
the
most
left
important
guard,
lineman,
your most important guys on the team, and they were really bad last year. So the running game's going to have to step it up this year for them with Howard and Breeder out there. I think they're going to get most of the work, and Parker and Williams are going to suffer this year. Simple fact of Tua's on the field.
And you're also, I'm assuming, concerned with the fact that Devontae Parker was nothing until last year. I mean, and even last year, 72 receptions isn't a huge number. That's not a stud wide receiver number, and he was getting targeted pretty well throughout the season. I mean, even from week 1, 7 targets. I mean, his lowest number, he saw 2 targets in week 14 and 4 targets in week 4 and 6. Other than that, it was 6 or more targets a game, and in some games he saw double-digit targets. Week 7, it was 10 targets. Week 10, it was 10 targets. Week 11, 10 targets. Week 12, 11 targets. Week 13, 10 targets. Week 16, 15 targets. And week 17, 11 targets. That's a really high target count.
He did have Josh Rosen on the field early, too. So that
he did, true. But he was looking at 128 targets, guys, for the season, and only caught 72 of those. That's not that great. And that's not really the type of receiver he is. He's not Julian Edelman. You know what I mean? He's not Jarvis Landry. He's a big-bodied guy that, you chuck it up there, the 50-50 ball type of guy. He's 6'3", 216, so he's a decent-sized guy. So he's not the same receiver as those guys. But you would have liked to seen more than 72 receptions on 128 targets. That's my concern with him. And then, of course, his yards per reception, were 16.7. That's pretty high for a guy that's only had 1 year with more than that, and every other year was 13, 11, and 12. So maybe some regression there as well. And his yards per target were also, again, highest they've been since his rookie year, with 9.4 yards per target. Prior to that, he never saw more than 8.5 outside of that rookie year, which was a small sample size on only 51 targets. He only started 4 games. So regression to the mean is what I think, John, when I think of Devontae Parker.
And like Thom brought up, you have possibly a quarterback change at some point coming, which most rookie quarterbacks will favor that tight end. So Gesicki will probably steal some targets here from Parker, as well as now you add in the burrito out of the backfield. So it could ultimately hurt Devontae Parker.
Did you mention Preston Williams?
No, but
Preston Williams returning too.
Yes.
So, and that kid's dynamite. He's dynamite. He is more talented than Devontae Parker. Anybody else got anything else on Mr. Devontae Parker?
Nope.
No.
I think there's gonna be some regression for him. Like I said before, I'd be happy with Devontae Parker as my wide receiver 3. That's about where I'd leave it though. I do like him. I don't hate him, and and Tom's not saying he hates him either, although you might. It's just he's going a little bit earlier than you. If you draft him where he's going, you're going to be disappointed. All right, fellas, you ready for me to cue it up? Are you sure you guys are ready? Because this might shock you. I might catch you guys off guard. Are you going to be okay once I announce this person's name?
Pat Mahomes.
No.
Not shocked.
No?
Chris
Not
Carson.
shocking?
Chris Carson.
Everybody knows what that means. Yeah, I'm not even going to let it go down all the way because we've talked about Chris Carson so much. He doesn't deserve that. Chris Carson, guys, Seattle is concerned about Chris Carson's ability to be healthy. You don't believe it? Not only did they already have Travis Homer on the roster, who performed well last year, but they also spent a 4th-round pick on DJ Dallas out of Miami, and of course signed Carlos Hyde in free agency. 6 foot, 230 pounds. Carlos Hyde is probably the most noteworthy of the offseason acquisitions. Last year in Houston, Hyde carried the ball 245 times for 1,070 yards. Hyde is a player that can carry a heavy load, averaging 13.4 carries per game over his career and 15 carries a game in Houston, and that's with Lamar Miller. Granted, they didn't play full seasons together. Hyde also tacked on 6 touchdowns in Houston and is really the quintessential goal line size for a running back. Hyde is definitely going to eat into that pie in terms of the goal line from Chris Carson in 2020. There's no doubt about it. And let's talk about Rashad Penny. You guys know I love Rashad Penny. Problem is, he's likely going to end up on PUP to start the season, but that's not going to be the end of the story for him, I don't think. And if you look at career averages, Carson has averaged 4.4 yards per carry to Penny's 5.3, as well as Carson's 6.1 yards per target to Penny's 6.9. Penny actually finished second among running backs in true yards per carry to Carson's rank of 24. Big difference there. Down the stretch, Seattle started to see what they had in Rashad Penny, their 2018 first-round pick, and he out-touched Carson 15-12 in Week 12 and almost matched Carson's touch count in Week 13, 20-24 advantage Carson. In those games, Penny outperformed Carson with 6.7 yards per touch and 3 touchdowns to Carson's 4.48 yards per touch and 1 touchdown. Those are huge gaps there, guys. And, of course, Carson had 1 fumble in that span as well. 1 fumble. Coincidentally, guys, that 1 fumble was in Week 12, which probably triggered Penny's increase in touches at the expense of Chris Carson, of course, because that fumble happened to be Carson's 7th of the season. Listen to this stat, guys. The only running back in the league to finish in the top 25 in fumbles was Chris Carson. Every other player in the top 25 was, guess what position?
Quarterback.
Quarterbacks, exactly. The next running back on the list was Derrick Henry with 5 fumbles, and Henry carried the ball 25 more times than Chris Carson did. Carson's percentage of carries that were fumbles was 2.5%. Henry's percentage was 1.6%. And those fumbles, guys, are not the only concern. But we know that Seattle had enough of it by Week 12. But Rashad Penny got hurt, and history was rewritten. Things went Chris Carson's way again, as they tend to do. Oh, and I almost forgot, guys. Chris Carson has only played in 68.75% of his games since entering the league. He tore his ACL in high school. He had a sprained ankle that bothered him in 2015, a broken thumb in 2016 that cut his senior season short. Carson broke his ankle during his rookie season with the Seahawks. He dealt with hip problems in 2018 and, of course, fractured his hip in 2019. Seattle hopes to have him in Week 1, but that's certainly not a guarantee. Look, at the end of the day, as much as I pick on Chris Carson, I admire his work ethic and grit. What I don't admire is that he's pretty much outkicked the coverage thus far in his NFL career. And one more fumble or injury, and his luck is going to run out. He might be an asset to start the season, if he's ready, but he's not as good as Penny, plain and simple. And I'm not sure he can even beat out Hyde coming off a fractured hip. Chris Carson's going way too high for my liking, and I do not think he's a starting running back, guys, at the end of the season this year. John?
I think, like you said, it's not his work ethic we ever questioned. It's just the injuries are starting to pile up year after year now. The fumble issues are getting worse. It's concerning because this team needs the run game to be more productive, and Carson was good in certain parts, but they cannot turn over the ball. They don't have the same defense they did years ago to make up for it there. So they brought in competition for Carson this year, and I think this could be the year that it's either going to be a joint backfield here, or either Hyde or Penny could possibly overtake him here.
Thom, where do you stand on Chris Carson?
It's all the injuries with him. The fumbles don't matter as much to me, I don't believe.
7's a lot, dude.
Marcus Allen in 1983 had 14. Eric Dickerson in 1984 had 14. Eric Dickerson in 1983 had 13.
But how many
These
carries?
guys are
But how many carries did they
between
have?
3 and 350. So
Yeah.
I mean,
and they are Hall of Famers too, so they get the benefit.
all
of that.
early in your career, if you learn how to that problem, you can learn that, and you're fine with it. It's the injuries with Carson for me.
And those are major injuries too, like the hip. A hip is years ago.
That's going to be a tough one. Yep.
Yeah, Bo Jackson never came back from a hip injury.
And the other thing too, guys, last year Seattle ran the ball 48.2% of the time. That's an ungodly number. That's going to come down. They were third in the league behind the Vikings, and we all remember how much they ran the ball. Actually, over 50% of the time, by the way. Good news for Dalvin Cook owners. But I don't know. There's a lot of variables there, and I think Chris Carson, guys, has been really lucky to this point in his career. A lot of things have gone his way. I think that finally changes in 2020. John, who's next on your list?
Mine next on the list is the PlayStation. Sony Michel. And I'm a Pats fan.
We hardly knew ye.
Yeah. I do not like Sony at all. So Sony first season, played 13 games, 209 attempts, 931 yards, 4.5 average, 6 touchdowns, measly 7 receptions on 11 targets for 50 yards. Only 1 fumble, so that's not bad. But it ain't great. It's not what they expect for a back that they drafted high to potentially be their Corey Dillon from years ago.
Let's not forget, John, Sony Michel was, like you said, a first-round pick after all.
Yes, and so the next year after 2019, Yes, he saw more attempts, played more games, played all 16 games, but less yardage, and his average went down from 4.5 in 2018 down to 3.7 in 2019. Touchdowns remain the same, but this guy is not used in the passing game at all, not when you have a James White here. And his ADP is 79, but now you have to throw the offense for a loop. Marcus Cannon just went on the COVID list. He will not be playing. That doesn't help their offensive line, but now you bring in Cam Newton. Cam Newton has the size and the power to take away some of the goal line touches that PlayStation is used to getting. I just don't see him. And then that's just adding one dimension. You bring a Cam Newton who potentially could do quarterback sneaks, option. It could help Michelle. He could see more red zone carries because of this. But the other part that's concerning for me, why I'm fading them, the other part is that back in May, Sony Michel had surgery on his foot. We have not heard much about progress here. He could start off on the PUP list.
Definitely.
I would rather have Damian Harris at the value he's possibly going, or put my investment in the Cam Newton more here. I just think that the offense will change with Cam Newton here now, and it will hurt Sony Michel. And then we don't even know how healthy Sony Michel is for the most part. And let's not forget that he is not a pass-catching back. He is strictly more of a goal line back. So his touchdowns could be good, but I just don't see the numbers. Not somebody I'm interested in PPR league. Standard league is different. He has more value, I think, in a standard league than he does in a PPR league.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. New England's offensive line last year they weren't doing Sony a ton of favors. They weren't bad by any means. They were pretty darn good in adjusting line yards. But 65% power success is good for 17th in the league. RB yards, they were at 3.9, which is 7th lowest. The league average for that was well over that. There was upwards of 4.26, I believe. And then you look at the stuff percentage. They fell in at 24th there. Second level yards, 16th, and open field yards, 28th. So they weren't the best offensive line for running backs. But again, Sony is dinged up a lot. He definitely hasn't blown us away. And he's on a team that, is a really good offense, and their offense is on the field an awful lot. The other thing that could be a disadvantage, John, that you might not have considered, if I'm not mistaken, and you guys can myth bust me on this, but Hightower and Chung opted out this year.
Yes.
So that's going to hurt that defense that I thought was slightly overrated last year anyway. So they could be playing from behind a lot more than you think.
Which means they'll throw more.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. The other part of it, though, too, let's not forget, because of these opt-outs, Marcus Cannon, Dante Hightower.
Did Marcus Cannon opt out, or is he on the COVID list? I guess I'm confused.
Opted out.
So it's almost like New England is just
tanking. It seems
I'm
fishy.
Just saying.
It seems
well,
fishy.
I don't even want to say tanking necessarily, but if Tom Brady was there, you think these guys would still play? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
But the other part of it, I didn't even go into his metrics.
Yeah.
His metrics were most of them were that bad.
Yeah.
So, like, he was 27 in breakaway runs, 43 in breakaway run rate. I mean, these are not good numbers for your starting back here. And then true yards per carry, 54. Ranked 54. Big hit, 61. Juke rate, 40. These are numbers you want to see high. His production premium, 71. Fantasy opportunities per opportunity, 114. This is not somebody I really want to put my value into. I'm not saying, like I said, he could see more goal line touchdowns here based on the fact that maybe Cam gets him down and they punch it in with him, kind of like they used to do with Devlin.
Yeah.
But, same time, he may not. It could be a Cam Newton show here. And like you said, no defense. They may be throwing a lot more here.
Well, and he had 20 plus carries in 5 different games, and he had double-digit carries in almost every game, and his efficiency was just horrid.
Yeah.
I mean, he came in at 3.7 yards per carry. So I'm just his touchdowns were good, though. He had 7 touchdowns last year. Not bad.
But that's misleading as well because he had 3 in one game against the Jets, so that means the rest of the season he only had 4.
But he still got in there.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
So that wasn't bad, but I'll be honest with you, and Tom, I'm probably going to guess that you're going to mirror me on this, is I just don't think I want any of their running backs. Damian Harris is intriguing, but traditionally we've stayed away from this backfield.
Oh, yeah. Michelle's going to get 900 yards because you're going to get 200, 250 carries. They're going to feed him the ball. He's a 2-down back. He's not that 3-down back like people
But that's
thought he
probably
was.
his ceiling, though, right? I mean, Harris could take this role away from him.
So if you know 900 yards and 6 touchdowns, if you know that before the season,
Right.
anything above that's like gravy.
And if he starts on the pup list, forget it. This could be Harris's backfield and no looking back. Him and White.
All right, let's move on from the artist formerly known as the PlayStation. Now he's like the
Xbox.
Neo Geo or whatever it is. No, not the Xbox.
No, I was kidding.
What was the one back in the day?
Coleco?
ColecoVision.
Atari,
That's
there's a bunch
Sony
of 'em.
Michelle now. All right, Tom. Who's next on the chopping block?
James Conner.
Oh, jeez.
Now that Nate Soldier opted out this year due to his bouts with cancer through the years, could James Conner join him? That's key. He had not Parkinson's.
He had cancer.
Yeah, he had cancer in college. Sports.
And again, that's something to consider, and that might be the biggest elephant in the room. That's a huge pre-existing condition. Somebody that gets COVID is more at risk to die.
That's
Let's
high
face
risk to
it,
him.
guys.
He's
Yeah.
very high risk, even though it was 5 years ago.
That's how serious that is.
James Conner owners loved him the last 2 years, except for the last weeks 13 to week 17 in both years. He's not down the stretch. He does not play well during the matters most in fantasy, which is fantasy playoffs. He's missed 6 games of the last 10 games of the last 2 seasons combined. He's only had 3 touchdowns the last 2 seasons in the combined during the playoffs for fantasy football. And he's ranked too high. I'd rather have guys like David Johnson, Mark Ingram, Le'Veon Bell, David Montgomery, and Jonathan Taylor where he's drafted at.
I agree with you there.
Can I interrupt? I hate to interrupt during our fade list, but this is important news that just dropped. Adam Schefter just reported that veteran running back LaShawn McCoy has reached an agreement on a 1-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Wow. Tom, we'll let you finish up, and we'll kind of react to that at the end of the show.
It just dropped, so I had to spit it
Yeah.
out. Not who I expected, but
Yeah, well, we know Devonta Freeman's not going there. But continue on James Conner, Tom. Sorry.
In
about that.
2018, he only played 2 of the last 5 games. Week 13, which is not a playoff game, and Week 17, which is usually not playoffs. The 3 playoff rounds, he did not play in fantasy football. 2019, he didn't play Week 13, Week 14, or Week 17. He played in Week 15 and Week 16 and only had 74 rushing yards and 1 touchdown combined. If he's your RB2, I don't want any of that. If he's on your bench, I have different feelings for him.
Yeah, and look, James Conner's not going to be a league winner for you, and frankly, he's probably not much of a value at his ADP. The one thing that stands out there that Tom mentioned that I really have been thinking more about as time goes on, and it's kind of kept me away from James Conner, is he really could opt out. Now, I think players have till August 8th to determine whether or not they're going to opt out. And if a player opts out, they can't opt back in. They're done for the year. So Hightower there, he can't say, well, coach, I changed my mind. No, you're done for the year. So that's a real situation that I'm concerned about for James Conner. What I will say about James Conner is the dude got 17.3 fantasy points per game in 2018 with Ben Roethlisberger and 11.2 last year without. So he still produces even without Roethlisberger there. But that's a significant drop. 17.3 to 11.2 is a huge difference. That's a difference between an RB1 and an RB3, really. So I'm kind of fading him as well. I'm staying away from James Conner because there's just way too many question marks. I don't know if you agree with that, John.
I do agree and I don't agree. I am a little concerned with his past of having cancer and all, but he's beaten that, and he hasn't shown any previous symptoms after he beat it. Let's not forget that he has put in a lot of work in this offseason, getting conditioned and all that. I'm not so much concerned about his immune system being down. I think he's actually built it back up. I think we would have seen something from from his cancer, but
So his T cells are in good shape.
yeah, I think Connor's okay here, but I can see why people would be hesitant to draft him.
All right. Yeah, but none of us are really excited about him.
I'm intrigued. I'm not
I'm
not
getting
faded.
less intrigued with each passing week.
So
You know who I'm also less intrigued about? The guy that I mentioned earlier, Mike Evans. Mike Evans had only 4 games over 15 PPR points in 2019. Did you guys know that? Only 4. This was also coincidentally on an offense that finished 4th in pass attempts per game, 1st in passing yards per game, and 4th in passing touchdowns per game. With all that love spread around, you'd think Mike Evans could have mustered more than 4 15-point games last year, but he didn't. And you think about that touchdown stat specifically that I mentioned, guys, 4th in passing touchdowns per game. Jameis Winston threw 33 touchdowns, and his stud receiver caught just 8 of them. And that 8 was actually the result of a near 12% touchdown percentage. So basically 12% of Evans' receptions ended up being touchdowns. Evans' career percentage is 9.8, and that's with a number of 17.6 in his rookie season, which is a crazy high number. Last season was an outlier. He was fortunate to finish with those 8 touchdowns. Now let's transition to Tom Brady. Tom Brady's in Tampa Bay now, in case you've been living under a rock. And in 2019, Brady targeted the wide receiver position 63% of the time, which was good for 3rd best in the league. Good news, right? However, he also finished with 48% success rate to the position, which was 27th in the league, and 6.8 yards per attempt at the position, which was the league's 2nd worst total. Granted, Brady is seeing a huge upgrade at the position, but those numbers are a big concern for me nonetheless, especially given that Brady's finished 2nd in pass attempts to the running back position. Mike Evans isn't a running back, right? Correct. What's worse is that not only did Julian Edelman finish with the most targets on the team with 155, but the highest catch percentage as well with a 65% catch rate. Remember that the wide receiver position as a whole was 48%, which means that Edelman and the slot position in general owned the targets on that team. Mike Evans isn't a slot receiver, is he? That's not good for Mike Evans. Mike Evans is the X receiver. N'Keal Harry, Josh Gordon, Antonio Brown, all 3 of them combined for 48 targets last year. You can even throw Philip Dorsett's targets in there and you're up to 101. That's not even close to the Evans 118 targets in 2019 that was also in 13 games. His 16-game pace was 145 targets, guys. That's an even bigger drop. And I haven't even talked about Rob Gronkowski, who Tom Brady didn't have at all last year, if you guys remember correctly. Gronkowski, he averages a 16-game pace of 110 targets a year. Gronk finished 1st on the team in targets in 2014, 1st in 2015, and 2nd in 2017. With Brady and New England, Gronkowski had a 15.16 touchdown percentage. Evans' career touchdown percentage is 10.38, and he doesn't have a career worth of chemistry with Tom Brady. Gronkowski does, however. You take all of that into consideration, that Mike Evans has a 2nd-round ADP of 23 and the 7th wide receiver off the board. Lastly, Tampa says that they want to throw deep frequently, and that's more tailored to Evans, no doubt about it. But Brady's ADOT has gone from 8.6 to 7.6 from 2012 to 2019. And at the end of the day, the 42-year-old Brady is going to the open receiver, which might be checkdowns to the running backs, tosses to the reliable receiver, which would be Chris Godwin, 6th in catch rate as opposed to Evans' rank of 84. And Godwin was 3rd in contested catch rate as opposed to Evans' rank of 28. And he's going to also throw to the more comfortable receiver, which we all know is Rob Gronkowski. Look, I'm not saying Mike Evans is going to suck. What I am saying is he's not the fit for Tom Brady that Gronkowski or Godwin are, and the running backs are going to see a lot more passing work when last year Winston targeted the position 19% of the time as opposed to the aforementioned 28% that Tom Brady targeted the position. My job, guys, is to pour through the numbers, the intangibles, the trends, and all of those things do not stand in the favor of Mike Evans. Simply put, I do not see him as a value worthy of a 2nd-round pick. My opinion, he's a mid-level to maybe even low end wide receiver 2. And right now he's going as your number 1 wide receiver. Hard pass. What do you think of Mike Evans, guys? Thom?
Since 2010, Brady's only thrown to the wide receiver for 100 times, targeted twice. 3 times. So it's always either a running back, tight end.
And it's only one wide receiver that gets that target count, too.
Correct.
From one year to the next, typically.
The last 5 years, there's only been running backs or tight ends and one wide receiver as his top 2 targets.
Yeah.
It's either that, it's never the second top wide receiver in the offense.
And Godwin is more tailored to him, John. To Brady, that is.
At his age, yes. But it's hard to knock Evans down. Like you said, you're not completely knocking
I'm not
Evans
knocking
down.
him. I'm just telling the world that you will be disappointed with him as your wide receiver 1.
Oh, I agree.
Book it.
Temper your expectations. He's known for I think every season was 1,000 yards, other than I believe 1,000 receiving yards Evans has gotten.
Right around there.
Yeah,
I can look that up for you if you'd like.
That would be great. But agree here. Brady's gotten older. He's not going to take those shots as much. So there's definitely going to be a dip in targets. Let's not forget they just added McCoy. We don't know how the run game's going to play into this. Arians does like to run the ball as well. I'm not saying he doesn't like to throw. He likes to mix it up, but it can change the targets up a lot here. So Evans could see a drop in a lot of categories here.
Yeah, and apparently I can't look that up for you, but Mike Evans is always right around 1,000
yards.
yards.
Yeah, he's pretty consistent yards wide, but this could be the first year. He might finish under 1,000 because Brady's never had this type of caliber of receivers, but now you also brought a shiny toy back, Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah.
Now you just added a veteran back here.
And I don't want to hedge my bets, but listen, guys, there is a distinct possibility that Chris Godwin might not have chemistry with Tom Brady, and Mike Evans is the guy that goes off. Just like I said, my job is to look and tell the listener, based on the information I see, what's more likely, and it's more likely that Chris Godwin is the number 1 receiver on this team, and I think you guys agree with that, at least right now.
Yeah, the short throws that Edelman does, that's Godwin's game too.
He throws to the guy that's where he's supposed to be, the most efficient receiver. You look at Godwin with his yards after the catch, he's just that guy. And Mike Evans is the N'Keal Harry, and we all know how that went last year. And granted, I'm not saying Mike Evans is significantly less or more talented than Harry. I don't think he's that much more talented than Harry, though. He's obviously more experienced, but you're going to be disappointed if you take him at 23. That's all I'm saying. John, who's next on your list?
My next fade or disappointment is Keenan Allen. I think the departure of Phillip Rivers is going to hurt Mr. Keenan Allen here. They also drafted Justin Herbert here. I don't see Allen putting up the numbers he has with Phillip Rivers. That's chemistry he had with Rivers. Now bringing Tyrod Taylor. Let's just start with Tyrod. We won't even throw Herbert into this. But Keenan Allen is going to see, I think, regression in a lot of categories. And a reason why is it's just a different philosophy with Tyrod Taylor on the field. Tyrod Taylor's best season was 2016. I apologize. He had 436 attempts. That was his best year. 436 attempts. And the year before, 2015, was actually statistically his better season than 2016, where he had 20 passing touchdowns. But out of all those years he started as a quarterback in Buffalo, his best receiver was Sammy Watkins. And those numbers were decent. He put up about 1,300 in change in yards, but since then has not been the same. But you're forgetting that Tyrod Taylor has never thrown hasn't thrown the ball for more than 436 attempts. And I don't see that changing here. They're invested in Eckler. They also got Joshua Kelly here. They still have Mike Williams. They still have Hunter Henry. To me, Allen's going to see regression here due to the fact that this team is changing its whole offensive philosophy here. Phillip Rivers was not a known running quarterback. Tyrod Taylor can run the ball. And he's averaged, other than the years in Cleveland, he averaged about 400 to 500 rushing yards on like 80 to 100 attempts. So I just think that it's going to change here for Allen, and we can't expect those high volume numbers and targets he saw with Rivers. What do you think?
Thom, what do you think? I'll let you start.
Tyrod Taylor is a game manager. In 2015, Watkins had 96 targets. Robert Woods had 80. Those are the top two. 2016, Charles Clay had 87, Robert Woods 76. 2017, LaShawn McCoy had 77, Charles Clay had 74. The wide receivers are not big in his offensive philosophy. He's more of a tight end to the running back, almost like Phillip Rivers, except he doesn't throw the ball down the field like Rivers did.
I just think sometimes people, their memory's not so good. Keenan Allen's a really good receiver, guys. I mean, he finished with 1,507 air yards. That's good for like 7th in the league. Last year's average depth of target was 10 yards. His catch percentage was 70%. He had 104 receptions on 148 targets for 1,199 yards. Granted, that is with Phil Rivers, and we haven't seen a sample size from Keenan Allen without Phillip Rivers. But, I mean, are we just underselling his ability as a receiver? And maybe we are. He thinks we are. Because a tweet that he put out recently, I don't know if you guys heard of this, he said, okay, I'm tired of biting my tongue. Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin, and the list goes on, are not a better receiver than me. Faster than me every day of the week. But separation, child please. He's not wrong, because there is a big difference between separation and being fast. Oddly enough, Mike Evans responded to him and said, hey, you tagged the wrong Chris Godwin, LOL, and don't be mad at us. We ain't making the rankings or care about them. I like the confidence, but be realistic. You're not on my level, bro. Now, I think Mike Evans is going to be proven wrong this year. I don't hate Keenan Allen. I'm actually cool with him right where his ADP is. But we probably are never going to see with Tyrod Taylor the Keenan Allen that we saw with Phillip Rivers. But I don't think it's going to be a situation where he completely... This is not, in my opinion, going to be a T.Y. Hilton without Andrew Luck situation. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't see the... I guess the biggest thing I don't see...
Do you think he'll be fine?
I think it's a T.Y. Hilton situation.
I don't think it is.
I have next.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Well, let's just segue right into that then. Thom, T.Y. Hilton.
All right, let's go back a little bit to 2011. Peyton Manning got hurt. He needs spinal fusion surgery. The Colts are really bad, so they won the Suck for Luck sweepstake by selecting him number 1 overall.
They did.
Also in the 2012 draft, they got another little gift in third rounder in T.Y. Hilton. Hilton becomes Luck's favorite target 4 consecutive years of over 1,000 yards and lead in 1,448 yards in 2016. Enter 2017. Andrew Luck had surgery on his shoulder, and with Jacoby Brissett, he was so inconsistent from week 1 on. He had 7 receptions for 177 yards one game. The very next game, 4 receptions for 19 yards. He was boom or bust. 2018 comes along, and so does Andrew Luck. A bounce back year with 76 receptions for 1,240 yards in 14 games. He missed 2 games with a grade 1 hamstring pull. 2019, Andrew Luck is gone, and Jacoby Brissett is back.
Luck opted out long before anybody else. He opted out last year. Yeah.
Stanford, smart man.
Yeah.
And he got injured September 22nd, 2019 with a left quad and missed 5 games. In 10 games, he did have 50 receptions for 501 yards and 5 touchdowns, which is averages over 12 point PPR points in 2019. That doesn't excite me for a guy who in position for number 54 overall and wide receiver 25, which is going to be a starting wide receiver for you.
He's also 30 years old, and he's not a Julio Jones 30 years old. He's a beat-up, broke-down T.Y. Hilton 30 years old, which is might as well be a 45-year-old receiver.
A lot of his injuries have been soft tissue, but those linger quite a bit.
And soft tissue is often indicative of conditioning at times and not being the most conditioned athlete. And he, and I'm a Will Fuller guy, so, I'll put myself out there, but this is every year with T.Y. Hilton. He's played 16 games twice, and he's been in the league since 2012. Not a very good ratio. I don't want any part of T.Y. Hilton. I don't even have him ranked in my custom rankings for our keeper league because that's the coup de grace right there, and I don't want him on my team. And I don't think, Phil Rivers is not tailored toward the type of player that T.Y. Hilton is. They've got Mike Evans with Zach Pascal and the rookie there, Pittman. They've got a Keenan Allen style player with Paris Campbell. They've got a great group of running backs that Phillip Rivers loves passing to the running back position. Hilton seems to me, Thom, like the odd man out.
The odd man out. He likes the big receivers, like Pittman
And Williams.
They're all 6'4". Tyrell Williams was 6'4". They're all big guys who can stretch the field. T.Y. Hilton's under 6 foot tall, 180 pounds. He's small. He's not going to make an X factor. He's not going to be a factor at all this year. But Phillip Rivers going to Burton and Doyle and the running backs, he's the odd man out.
Yeah, I don't like Hilton this year, John.
I just Hilton's injuries have been piling up, and this team went. You know, they drafted Pittman here, and then the year before drafted Paris Campbell. They're trying to change their whole wide receiver core here, and I think it's, you know, they say they're going to get Hilton involved, but I don't buy it. You wouldn't draft two receivers 2 years in a row with your top picks to keep Hilton involved. Or if they do keep Hilton involved, it's not going to be the target share you saw before. He's gotten older, and Rivers doesn't fit this mold that Luck and Manning have. So I just think it changes. I think T.Y. will drop off.
And I totally forgot. Rivers likes throwing the tight ends, and he's got Doyle and Burton as well. And Mo Alley Cox. All right. Moving on to my last guy here, and I'm going to break a lot of hearts because this guy does have a lot of hype surrounding him this past offseason, and the hype train is still going pretty strong for a young man who I love from an ability standpoint, A.J. Brown. As a matter of fact, I actually thought A.J. Brown was the most NFL ready wide receiver in the 2019 rookie class, but Marcus Mariota's Tennessee Titans drafted him, which was horrible. And then when it became Ryan Tannehill's Titans, not much changed for me, guys. We've gone into great detail a number of times as it relates to Tannehill's inability to support multiple pass catchers to double-digit fantasy games. I'm not going to beat that dead horse, but it's definitely part of the case that I'm building. Make no mistake about it. If you would like to hear that in detail, you can listen to our past shows, mostly about busts, and that's where Ryan Tannehill comes in. Where A.J. Brown comes in is he actually finished second among wide receivers in yards per reception with, get this, guys, 20.21 yards per reception. Kenny Golladay finished third with 18.31. Galladay's, though, is more sustainable, and I'll tell you why. Because Golladay did it with 116 targets. Brown's target total was only 84. I like to measure the potential for regression based on sample size, and Brown's sample size was much smaller. Brown also finished third in touchdowns on just 52 receptions. That's a touchdown percentage of 15.4 for Brown. All of the other wide receivers catch 8 touchdown passes, guys. Remember, 15.4 for Brown. Amari Cooper at 10.1%. Mike Evans at 11.9%. Tyler Lockett at 9.6%. DJ Chark at 10.95%. And Austin Eckler at 8.7%. Huge difference. Even the highest was Mike Evans with 11.9%. And Brown saw 15.4% touchdown percentage on a much smaller sample size than any of these guys, even Eckler. Only Darius Slayton finished with a higher touchdown percentage, actually, with 16.6. Otherwise, Brown's percentage was significantly higher. All those other guys, and those guys are, honestly, if you listen to that list, kind of a who's who of wide receivers in the NFL right now. And that, guys, is the epitome of implied regression. Listen to these finishes in offensive stats for the Titans. 30th in plays per game, 32nd in pass attempts per game, 32nd in completions per game, 2nd in incompletions per game, 25th in passing yards per game, and 29th in first down percentage. You take all of that information and consider that this team finished 4th in yards per pass attempt and 4th in yards per completion. That just doesn't jive. You have to understand that this is efficiency from Tennessee's offense, Ryan Tannehill, and A.J. Brown, that's just simply not sustainable. Jonnu Smith is ascending. And on top of that, guys, this is just simply Derrick Henry's offense. It's what brought the Titans to the dance, and they're not going away from that. That also means that teams are going to stack the box and force Tannehill to get the job done. He couldn't do it in the playoffs. He couldn't do it in Miami. In his 6 seasons in Miami, Tannehill was far below his 2019 numbers. He averaged 63.05 completion percentage, which went all the way up to 70.3 in 2019. He averaged a 4.4 touchdown percentage, which went all the way up to 7.7 in 2019. He averaged 7.0 yards per attempt, which went all the way up to 9.6 in 2019. And he averaged a 2.6% interception percentage, which went all the way down to 2.1 in 2019. Regression, guys, is the word that is painted all over the Titans offense. And A.J. Brown is not going to escape it. His ADP's 30, ahead of Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen, Juju Smith-Schuster, Allen Robinson, Calvin Ridley, Odell Beckham Jr., DJ Moore, Robert Woods, DJ Chark, just to name a few. Not to mention he faces the toughest schedule for the wide receiver position. I got 3 words for you, listeners. Don't do it. A.J. Brown.
And you love A.J. Brown.
I love him as a player.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the case, and the case doesn't look good for A.J. Brown, John.
I'm not on A.J. Brown just because what you've broken down with Tannehill just scares me off of him. Not to mention he's never supported, like you said, more than 2 people at a time or more than one.
And all of that information, Tom, is not just the efficiency, the outrageous efficiency of A.J. Brown, but of the offense and of Tannehill as well. It's all going to regress.
Like you said, they were on first team. He only averaged 6 targets a game for as a wide receiver 1. And only 4 receptions.
That's crazy.
He's boom or bust.
Yeah, he really
He's that
is.
big play guy
At best.
But he doesn't get enough targets like a Galladay does.
Yep.
Or the Julio Joneses of the world. Minimum targets.
If you put DK Metcalf on this team and put A.J. Brown in Seattle, A.J. Brown would be fighting for the wide receiver 1 overall. I firmly believe that. That's what I think of him as a player. This is just not the situation for him. And the day he got drafted there, I was like, damn, because I was disappointed, and we're going to see why in 2020. I love the buzz around him. He deserves every bit of it from a talent standpoint, but it's not just talent. It's talent, it's opportunity, and it's the situation that you're in, and he's only got 1 out of those 3 as far as advantages go. So that's where I'm at on A.J. Brown. What else we got? Nada.
That's it.
That's it.
9 players, 9 fades. But good news for you guys, next episode, we're going to talk about our faves, the guys we like a lot, and we're going to be a lot more upbeat, and we're going to help you win some championships with the names that we throw out there. Guys that are going to have a great year, and you might even get a really good bargain based on where their ADP and their ranking is. So it's going to be really fun, and it's nice to talk about the guys that we think are going to disappoint this year, but we have plenty of guys to fill your rosters with that we think are going to have big years for you. So you guys ready for that episode next time around?
Next week.
All right. We'll see you guys next time, and thanks for tuning in to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week.
See you guys.
See ya.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for supporting the show. Until next time.